Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world one book at a time.
So today's deep dive it's a little different.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
when we hear a title like the one we're looking at,
Hmm.
especially from a Harvard psychologist, we have certain expectations.
Absolutely. When I first saw The Power of Mindful Learning by Ellen J. Langer, my brain immediately filed it under, self-help.
Right, you hear mindful, you think stress reduction, breathing exercises, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
a toolkit for wellness.
Exactly. I'm picturing yoga mats, meditation apps, a calm voice telling me to focus on my breath to get through finals week.
And we need to uh, perform a very hard pivot right at the start here. If you're listening to this expecting a guide on how to meditate your way to a better GPA, this isn't it.
No, this is not a self-help session.
It's an
It's an
autopsy.
institutional autopsy. That's the perfect way to put it.
Ellen Langer is a social psychologist, yes, but she's not interested in your inner peace here. She's looking at the machinery of cognition. She's asking this really fundamental question. Why do our major institutions, our schools, our businesses, even our medical systems, seem almost perfectly designed to make us, well, stupid?
Stupid is a very strong word, but it gets to the heart of her argument, doesn't it? That these systems are engineered, intentionally or not, to produce what she calls mindlessness.
And that's key. It's not an insult. She's not saying people in the system are mindless. She's saying mindlessness is the output of this system. It's what the machine produces.
So we need to define that term very carefully. What is mindlessness in this context?
Right. It's not just zoning out.
Yeah.
Langer defines it in a very specific structural way. It is a state of cognitive entrapment. It's when you become so reliant on old categories, on automatic behaviors, that you literally stop being able to see new information from your environment.
You're running a script.
You are running a script that was written a long time ago, and you can't deviate from it, even when the world in front of you is screaming that the script is wrong.
So the central thesis of this book and of our deep dive today is that the way we teach, the way we train professionals, it's all built on a design flaw. And it's not a bug, it's a feature.
It's the core feature. We're looking at the systems. Let's call it its operating system. And that operating system is context-free absolutism.
Context-free absolutism. That sounds intense, almost like a political ideology.
In a cognitive sense, it is. It's a regime of thought. The system's primary design flaw, according to Langer, is that it presents information as if it were absolute, as if it were context-free.
We're taught that things are a certain way, full stop.
Exactly. We're not taught that things could be a certain way, depending on the perspective, depending on the variables.
This feels so counterintuitive, though. I mean, my entire schooling was about getting the right answer. 2 plus 2 is 4, the capital of France is Paris. 1066, Battle of Hastings. You want that certainty.
We crave it. The answer key is comforting. But Langer's point is that this demand for the right answer is the very thing that poisons the well.
How so?
It's the difference between a photograph and a simulation. The system gives us a photograph static, one angle, one moment in time, and it tells us this is reality.
And a simulation is dynamic. It changes.
It changes based on your input. Langer says that by handing out these static photographs of knowledge, the system encourages a phenomenon she calls overlearning.
And overlearning usually sounds like a good thing, right? If you've overlearned your lines for a play, you're ready. You don't have to think about it.
We think of it as mastery, as reaching a point of automaticity. But in a systems analysis, that automaticity comes with a hidden cost, a very high cost.
Okay, what is the cost? Because saving brain power by making things automatic seems like a good trade-off.
The cost is rigidity. The cost is the loss of adaptability. When you overlearn a skill, Langer uses the example of a tennis serve. All the little component parts fuse together into one big, unchangeable chunk.
The grip, the toss, the swing.
It all becomes one single macro program in your brain. And the problem is, you lose conscious access to the individual parts. You can't separate them anymore.
So if you need to adjust just one little thing, like your grip, because the ball is wet, you can't.
You can't. You have to run the whole program as you learned it. You're locked in. So if the wind picks up or the court surface is different or you have a minor injury, you can't adapt. You've traded flexibility for a very brittle form of consistency. You've become a machine that only works perfectly under the exact conditions in which it was trained.
This connects directly to her critique of the basics. We are obsessed with this idea. You have to master the basics before you can get creative.
Learn the rules before you break them. It sounds wise, but it's one of the clearest examples of what she calls normative enforcement. The system sets up an average as the correct.
Like the correct way to hold a tennis racket.
Exactly. What is that based on? It's based on a norm, an average. It probably assumes a certain hand size, 5 fingers, a certain grip strength.
But almost nobody is perfectly average.
Sure.
No one is. What if your hand is smaller? What if you're missing a finger? What if you have arthritis? Suddenly, the basic grip isn't basic at all. It's an obstacle. It's biomechanically wrong for you.
And if that student fails to master this supposedly correct grip, the system doesn't say, maybe this grip is the problem.
Never. The system says you aren't good at tennis. It locates the failure in the individual, not in the one-size-fits-all instruction. The system protects its own categories by labeling any deviation as a deficit in the learner.
Which is so important. But Langer shows that if you just tweak the instruction a tiny bit, you unlock a completely different kind of intelligence.
This is where we have to talk about the physics video experiment. For me, this is the smoking gun in her entire argument.
The conditional versus absolute instruction study, I love this one because the intervention is so small, it's just a couple of words.
It's a tiny change in the framing.
Yeah.
So they take 2 groups of students. They're about to watch a video explaining some physics concepts. Group A is our control group, the absolute group. The instructor introduces the video by saying, "This video presents the concepts of physics."
Standard stuff. Here is the truth. Your job is to absorb it. It implies finality.
It implies this is settled, absolute fact. Now, Group B, the conditional group, they watch the exact same video, same content, same narrator, everything's identical. But the introduction is different.
And what do they hear?
They're told, this video presents one of several outlooks on physics.
That's it. Just adding one of several outlooks.
That is the only difference. It plants a seed of possibility. It frames the information not as divine law, but as a perspective. It tells the student's brain, pay attention, this is useful, but it's not the only way to see it.
Okay, so what happens when they get tested? Because the classic fear from an educator would be, well, if I tell them it's just an opinion, they won't learn it, they'll check out.
That is the fear, absolutely. But the data showed something else entirely. On a standard rote memorization test, fill in the blanks, multiple choice, both groups performed equally well.
So there was no loss in factual recall.
None. The conditional group learned the material just as well as the absolute group. But here's the kicker. When they were given new problems that required them to apply the concepts creatively, problems that required a slight modification of what they'd learned.
Let me guess. The absolute group struggled.
They fell apart. They had frozen the information into a static, unusable block. They couldn't manipulate it. But Group B, the conditional group, they could adapt the concepts. They could play with them. They significantly outperformed the absolute group on every measure of creative application.
Wow. So just by adding a layer of uncertainty, you actually make the students smarter, more flexible. You turn them from simple recorders into actual thinkers.
You make them mindful. You keep the categories fluid enough for them to use.
So this is the million-dollar question then. If conditional instruction works better, if it produces more adaptive thinkers without any downside for basic recall, why is our entire system built on absolute instruction? Why does every textbook read like it was handed down from on high?
Now we have to look at the incentive architecture. We have to look at the economy of certainty. Systems persist because they solve a problem. And the problem our educational system is designed to solve is not how do we create geniuses.
It's how do we efficiently process large numbers of people?
It's crowd control. It's about efficiency. Think about it. If I'm a teacher with 35 kids in my class and I teach that this is the answer, my life is simple. I can give a multiple choice test. A machine can grade it. Done.
But if you teach, well, this could be the answer, depending on the context.
And I'm in trouble. Because then I have to read 35 different essays. I have to engage with 35 different arguments and contexts. I have to evaluate nuance. That is incredibly expensive in terms of my time and my cognitive load.
So we're essentially sacrificing the quality of student learning for the efficiency of the evaluation system.
That's the trade-off. We optimize for the speed of grading, not the depth of thinking. But there's another incentive that's just as powerful, maybe more so.
Which is?
Authority. The experts need to be the expert.
Right. The sage on the stage.
If there is only one right answer, then I, the teacher, hold the keys. I am the gatekeeper of truth. You must come to me. But if answers are conditional, if the right answer depends on the perspective,
then student's perspective suddenly has value. A student might see a context that the teacher missed.
And the hierarchy collapses. The teacher have to engage in a genuine dialogue. And for many institutions, for many experts, that's threatening. It introduces uncertainty. Langer's analysis suggests that the stability of categories is crucial for maintaining expert authority. It's safer to pretend we know everything than to admit how much is conditional.
And the students buy into this too. We're trained from day one to ask, is this going to be on the test?
We are. The student becomes a rational actor within the system. Langer points to what she calls the myth of delayed gratification.
Study now, play later.
Exactly. The system frames the process of learning as work, as suffering you have to endure to get to the play, the reward, which is the grade or the summer vacation.
It separates the process from the outcome. The learning itself isn't the point. It's just the toll you pay to get the prize.
Which means the student is incentivized to find the shortest possible path to the prize. They aren't trying to understand the world, they're trying to hack the test. Why build a deep mental model when you can just memorize a few key phrases?
There's a quote she uses from a student that is just perfect.
Right.
The student who says, I know that material so well, I could take that exam in my sleep.
And we hear that as a brag, as a sign of mastery.
But think about what it's actually saying, in my sleep.
It's the definition of mindlessness.
Literally.
The ideal product of this system, the A student, is someone who can regurgitate information without conscious thought, without wakefulness. We are actively rewarding the successful suspension of critical thinking. We're celebrating the person who has become a perfect recording device.
Which creates people who are brilliant at following a recipe, but completely lost when they have to cook without one.
And the real world, of course, has no recipe.
Okay, so we have the system design, context-free absolutism. We have the incentives, efficiency and authority. But for a system like this to survive, it needs a story. It needs a legitimizing narrative. How does it justify itself?
It justifies itself through the mythology of rigor and right answers.
It rebrands its biggest flaw as its greatest strength.
Precisely. The system creates what Langer calls the fact package. It takes incredibly complex, messy realities, history, science, art, and it compresses them into these neat, bite-sized, absolute facts for easy consumption.
The William the Conqueror example is so good here. 1066, Battle of Hastings.
It's a data packet. It's a zip file in your head, say 1066, and my brain auto-completes with Hastings.
Right. But do I know what was actually at stake in that battle? Do I understand the cultural collision it represented? No. I just know the association of the words.
And the system calls that knowledge. The deeper critique is that this strips out all perspective. A textbook that gives you the three main causes of the Civil War is committing an act of, really, intellectual violence.
Because the causes look very different if you're a plantation owner in South Carolina versus an abolitionist in Massachusetts.
Or an enslaved person in Georgia. But the system can't handle that messiness. It's impossible to grade on a multiple-choice test. So it flattens everything. And it legitimizes this flattening process by calling it rigor. It calls it objective truth.
When really it's just data compression for easy evaluation.
Exactly. Ambiguity is framed as weakness. A student who says, well, it depends on your perspective, is seen as evasive, as not knowing the real answer.
And this feeds into a much older idea about what intelligence even is, doesn't it?
It does. It goes back to the correspondence theory of intelligence from the 19th century. People like Galton, Spearman, Binet.
What's the core idea there?
The narrative is that there is a single, fixed, objective reality out there. And intelligence is simply a measure of how well your internal mind corresponds to or copies that external reality.
So intelligence is basically a photocopy machine. The better the copy, the smarter you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if your copy is different, if you see the world from a different angle, the system doesn't say, oh, an interesting perspective. It says, you are wrong.
You are defective.
You're unintelligent. And this narrative is crucial because it justifies the whole sorting mechanism of the system. It allows the system to claim it's not being biased. It's simply measuring who can see the truth and who can't.
Okay, so that's the justification. Let's get into the operational mechanisms, the tools of enforcement. How does the system actually do this to us on a cognitive level?
The most fundamental tool is language itself, and specifically the constant, unrelenting use of the verb to be. The difference between saying this is and this could be oh.
The rubber object study from her book comes to mind here. It's such a simple, elegant demonstration of this.
It's a fantastic experiment. They show people this weird, nondescript piece of rubber. To group A, they say, this is a dog's chew toy. To group B, they say, this could be a dog's chew toy.
Another tiny linguistic tweak, is versus could be, absolute versus conditional.
Later in the experiment, the subjects are given a task where they need an eraser, but there isn't one on the table. All they have is that rubber object.
And the people who are told, this is a chew toy.
They get stuck. Their brains have locked the object into that one category. The file is closed, they look right at a piece of rubber and can't see it as an eraser because it's been labeled toy.
But the could be group.
They're far more likely to pick it up and use it as an eraser because the category was left open. The conditional language kept their minds flexible.
That's incredible. The language we use literally changes what we can see and what we can do.
And our educational system is an is machine. This is the formula. This is the date. This is the theme. We are systematically training students to see labels instead of possibilities. We are creating a kind of functional blindness.
And this blindness has consequences that go way beyond failing a small lab test. The medical diagnosis example. That's where it gets truly terrifying.
The Janet Eck thesis. Yes, this is where the stakes become life and death. Eck studied how medical students are trained to memorize symptoms.
Which is the ultimate rote learning environment, right? You have to know thousands of these symptom-disease connections cold.
You do. But the problem is that for decades, the standard symptoms for major events, like a heart attack, were based on data from a very narrow demographic.
150-pound white males, basically.
Right. So the textbook says heart attack, IS, crushing chest pain radiating down the left arm. It's an absolute. That connection gets overlearned. It gets fused in the doctor's mind.
And then a female patient presents in the ER.
And women often experience heart attacks very differently. Nausea, shortness of breath, extreme fatigue, back pain, not necessarily the Hollywood chest-clutching scene.
So the doctor, who has been trained mindlessly,
That doctor isn't stupid. They're highly educated, they passed all their exams, but they are trapped in the category they learned was absolute. They see the patient's symptoms, but since those symptoms don't match the heart attack file in their head, they misdiagnose. They call it indigestion or anxiety.
and the patient can die. Not from a lack of knowledge, but from a lack of cognitive flexibility.
The doctor wasn't trained to think these symptoms could be a heart attack, conditional on this patient's gender and physiology. They were trained that a heart attack is one specific thing. The rigidity of the category blocked the perception of reality.
That's chilling. It shows how these feedback loops become self-reinforcing. The system creates the error, and the error seems to confirm the system's rules.
And Langer's brilliant on these feedback loops. The one she spends the most time on is probably the ADHD feedback loop.
This is a delicate area, obviously. She's not claiming that ADHD as a neurological condition doesn't exist.
No, not at all. But she's challenging the context. She's asking, is it always a deficit in the child, or is it sometimes a mismatch between the child's attention style and an incredibly rigid, boring environment?
The system demands one very specific type of attention. Narrow, prolonged focus on a single, often uninteresting stimulus.
And a child might be paying attention to a dozen other things. The buzz of the lights, the bird outside the window, the social dynamics in the room. They might actually be more mindful of the total environment. But the system defines that as a failure.
So the system labels the behavior as a deficit. That's the first step in the loop.
Right. The system responds with a diagnosis. The child then internalizes that label. I'm broken. There's something wrong with my brain. That leads to self-limiting behaviors, which then proves the diagnosis to the teachers.
See? We were right. He has the disorder.
And the most crucial part of this loop is that it completely absolves the system. The school never has to ask, is our curriculum mind-numbingly boring? Or is our teaching style outdated? Because the problem has been neatly located inside the child's brain.
It's the ultimate institutional defense mechanism. The factory is perfect, the product is defective.
A completely closed loop. We see a similar thing with what she calls the placebo expectation loop. She has this great thought experiment she does with her students about a nasal spray contraceptive.
Right. She asks them if you could prevent pregnancy with a nasal spray.
And their immediate reaction is laughter. That's absurd. That's biologically impossible.
Store slammed shut.
The moment they say impossible, they stop thinking. They don't generate hypotheses, they just reject it. Then she shows them a real article about research into that very thing, and suddenly they're curious. But the point is, when the system tells us something is impossible, we stop looking for ways to make it possible. We police the boundaries of our own knowledge.
And this works in reverse, too. The Jerry Avorn lecture example shows how easily our perceptions are manipulated by context.
Ooh, this one is so clever. Avorn, a professor at Harvard Medical School, gives a lecture and puts up a slide showing the side effects of a new drug, nausea, fatigue, headaches with the percentages.
And the audience looks at it and thinks, wow, this drug sounds awful, very risky.
The data seems unambiguous. Then, the reveal. The data on the slide was from the placebo group.
The people taking the sugar pill.
But because the information was framed, it was put in the side effects category. That's what everyone saw. The label overrode the reality. We see what we expect to see, even to the point of feeling physically ill from a sugar pill.
Okay, so this is a damning portrait. We have a system that enforces rigidity, rewards mindlessness, creates dangerous errors, and then blames the victims of its own design. So, the big question, why does it persist?
This is the persistence analysis, and it's the most important part of a system's critique. The system doesn't survive because people are dumb or evil. It survives because it provides benefits. It solves certain problems.
So who benefits from this system of mindlessness?
The gatekeepers benefit. The evaluators. And think about risk aversion and assessment. A college admissions officer, an HR manager. Their job is to sort people. They rely on stable, predictable categories.
SAT scores, GPAs, credentials, hard numbers.
Exactly. Imagine an admissions officer decides to be mindful. They see a candidate with a messy transcript, but who shows incredible resilience or creativity. They take a chance.
That's a huge risk for them personally, isn't it?
It's a huge risk. Because if that student fails, the officer's judgment is questioned. The dean comes knocking. But if they admit a student with perfect scores and that student fails...
Nobody blames the admissions officer. They just say the student couldn't handle the pressure. The system is safe.
The standardized metrics provide cover. They provide liability protection. It is organizationally safer to be wrong while following the rules than to be right while breaking them. The incentives are aligned with maintaining the status quo.
And on a larger scale, it just makes the whole machine run more smoothly, right? It lowers coordination costs.
That's the cultural comfort piece. Standardization allows different parts of the system, high schools, colleges, employers, to talk to each other. They share a common language of grades and scores. We accept damage to individual minds in exchange for the smooth functioning of the network. The machine keeps running, even if it's chewing up the people inside it.
That's a bleak trade-off.
It is. And failing to see that trade-off is the crisis in perception. We think the system is broken when it produces these outcomes, but it's not. It's working exactly as designed. It is designed for stability and efficiency, not for mindful learning.
And that brings us to the interconnection piece. How this system of thinking has consequences that ripple out into society. She talks about the illusion of the best fit.
Yes, this is a direct assault on a core belief in our culture. We're always told to find the job that's the best fit for you, as if both you and the job are fixed, static puzzle pieces.
But her argument is that we construct the environment, and the environment constructs us.
It's a dynamic relationship. Her analogy is about height. Is being tall a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it depends. It's good for reaching a high shelf.
So in that context, it's an ability. But on a long flight, stuck in an economy seat, it's a disability. The trait itself is neutral. The context gives it value. Our system pretends the value is absolute. It says fast is good, high test score is good, focused is good. But a mindful perspective says good for what?
And because we've been trained for so long to accept the system's absolute categories, we are literally blind to reality when it contradicts them. Which brings us to the double word illusion.
A classic. You show someone a simple phrase, written clearly, a bird in the hand.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, a normal reader will read a bird in the hand. They will not see the second, the.
Their brain just edits it out.
Because the brain is running on a script. It sees what it expects to see. It prioritizes the familiar pattern over the sensory data that's right in front of its eyes. It chooses the correct phrase over the real one.
And the twist in this experiment is just, it's perfect. The people who do see the second, the,
are often people with certain types of head injuries, people whose automatic cognitive processing has been disrupted. Because they can't take the world for granted, they have to read it word by word. They see reality because they've lost the privilege of mindless efficiency.
That is profound. The supposedly healthy brain is the one living in an illusion.
It is the crisis in perception, in a nutshell. We are so well adapted to the system's expectations that we are functionally blind. We are all missing the second the all day, every day.
So let's connect this to the present day. This framework seems more relevant than ever.
Oh, absolutely. Look at corporate training. It's all about best practices.
Here's the playbook. Memorize it.
Yeah.
Execute it.
It is context-free absolutism. It's the physics video experiment in the boardroom. And it works great until the market shifts, until a new technology emerges. Then the company is full of people who have overlearned the old playbook and are completely incapable of adapting
They just keep running the old program, but harder?
until they drive the business off a cliff. Or think about algorithmic sorting. An AI is the ultimate mindless learner. It has no understanding of context. It only knows the patterns in the data it was fed.
It's pure overlearning on a massive scale.
So if it's trained on historical data where every successful executive was a white man, it will learn that association as an absolute rule. It will screen out other resumes not because it's malicious, but because it is mindless. It's trapped in the categories of the past.
And we see this in our political discourse constantly.
It's drowning in his language. He is a traitor. That policy is evil. They are deplorable. There's no conditionality. There's no nuance.
It makes compromise impossible, doesn't it?
How can you compromise with something you've labeled as absolute evil? You can't. If something is wrong, your only option is to destroy it. But if something can be harmful in this context, but maybe has benefits in another, well, now you can have a conversation. Our politics is suffering from a catastrophic failure of cognitive flexibility.
So after this entire autopsy, what's the final takeaway? Where does this leave us?
I think it leaves us needing to fundamentally redefine what we mean by intelligence.
So it's not about knowing all the answers.
It's the opposite. If the world is defined by constant change and uncertainty, then the person who has memorized the most facts about the past is actually at a disadvantage. They are brittle.
So who is the smartest person in the room?
The smartest person in the room is the one who can remain uncertain. The one who is comfortable saying, I don't know, or it depends. The one who can look at something everyone else has labeled a dog toy and see a potential eraser. The one who can see their own supposed disabilities as potential abilities in a different context.
It's about keeping the categories open, staying in that could-be mode.
Exactly. The core lesson is that everything is the way it is until it isn't. The system trains us to believe in the stability of things. A mindful learner understands that reality is a process, not a destination. And the power in that is not about getting a better grade. It's about gaining the freedom to see the world as it actually is. Fluid, contextual, and filled with possibilities we've been trained not to see.
A powerful place to leave it, and hopefully a good way to start noticing the second that in your own world. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind crisis and perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a shorter, visual overview of this topic, see the mini explainer linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.